Oh, check it out. I just got my new Bluetooth speaker and I cannot wait to share it with you guys. Oh, wait, what? I ordered a Bluetooth speaker, not a bunch of speaker parts. Well, looks like we might just have to build our own Bluetooth speaker then. This is gonna be fun. All right, so if I'm being completely honest, what you just saw there was a little bit of acting. I know, I had you all completely fooled, right? So here's what really happened. A couple of weeks ago, I ordered all of these Bluetooth speaker parts because I wanted to make my own custom Bluetooth speaker. And then I thought, no, you know what? Let's order 2 because I'd love to give away one of these speakers at the end of the video. And then I thought, hey, wouldn't it be fun if I completely ripped off John Malecki's concept of pro versus beginner projects? So what we're gonna do is actually make 2 Bluetooth speakers. One is going to be really simple and easy to make. And then the other one is gonna be a little bit more complex and a lot fancier when we're done. And I know what you're thinking, and the answer is yes. I am going to be keeping the nice one for myself and then giving away the simple one at the end of this video. So with that said, let's head to the shop and get started on this build. Okay, I'm kidding. Obviously, I'm gonna give the nice one to you guys and then keep the simple one for myself. Come on, let's get started on this build. Now that we're here in the shop, we are actually going to take these speaker components and set them to the side for a little bit. What we're actually going to do is start by building the cabinet for our simple speaker. For a Bluetooth speaker kit like this, all you really need is a box to put all the components in. And last night I was messing around at eSol, which is the CNC control software for the X-Carve, and I noticed that they have a box making plugin. So all I had to do was punch in the dimensions of the box I wanted, and it spat out all of these really cool looking jigsaw pieces. And then I had to add a couple spots like here for the speakers themselves. But really, this is probably just about the easiest way you could ever design a Bluetooth speaker. In terms of material, all we're gonna need is this simple 29-inch by 29-inch piece of pine plywood.
Right off the bat, I was a little bit surprised to see a 2-hour time estimate on this carve, but it makes sense given the volume of cutting that had to be done. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, this was far from an uneventful cut.
Well, I guess it wouldn't make for a very interesting video if everything went exactly according to plan. That box maker plugin that I talked about earlier doesn't include tabs by default. So as soon as this piece was done being cut out, it came loose, then got pulled back into the router bit and, well, it destroyed itself. So we are going to continue with the carve.
Although this time I went back in and added a bunch of tabs to the rest of my pieces. I got through 3 more before trouble managed to rear its ugly head again. This time it was an issue of me not setting the depth of the material correctly, which caused basically the exact same problem.
So that didn't work out quite the way I would have liked it to have worked out. We got 4 out of our 6 worked, but 2 of them didn't. So I'm just gonna reload the machine with a new piece of plywood and we're gonna recarve the 2 that didn't work.
While I am a bit sad that I wasted so much plywood, I did learn 2 valuable lessons about my X-Carve. 1, always check to make sure your cutouts have tabs, and 2, level your wasteboard and then double check your material thickness before each carve. Hopefully you guys at home can learn from my mistakes on this one.
So, well, those carves did take a little while. We now have the 6 pieces that make up our speaker cabinets, and as you can see, they all lock together like this. However, there's a small issue. So you can see here, because of the size of the bit we were using, you don't get clean, crisp inside corners. What you actually end up with is a little bit of a radius here.
Thankfully, there's a very easy solution to that problem. I just loaded up a flat top blade and used it to carefully carve out all of those interior corners.
Now that these pieces are all cleaned up, we can finally get it assembled and see what it looks like.
Because all of these pieces fit together so tightly, all I had to do was add a little bit of glue and then clamp them together. Now obviously, not everybody out there has a CNC, but this is just one of many ways you could make a simple box to build a Bluetooth speaker in. All you really need is a rectangular housing with the right interior volume and a few cutouts for the various parts. How you get there is kind of up to you. Before I installed the front and rear panels, I gave them each a quick coat of black paint. And while that dried, I sanded the corners of the box to smooth out any imperfections. Originally, I wanted to leave the whole box as just raw wood, but the plywood that I used was super cheap stuff, and even with only a light sanding, I had already burned through the veneer layer. So I gave the whole box a white paint job to cover up my mistakes and called it a day. Finally, I applied a little bit of glue and gently persuaded that front panel into position.
All right, now that's done. We're gonna leave this to dry and get started on our Pro speaker. So look, obviously that first speaker cabinet is not my greatest work, but that's kind of the point, right? I wanted that cabinet to be representative of something that an entry-level enthusiast might be able to make in an afternoon. Now we're gonna try and take things to the next level. Laid out in front of me here, we have some walnut, which is my favorite wood, and hopefully whoever ends up winning this speaker also likes walnut. And what we're gonna do with it is glue it up into some panels and use that to create some speaker cabinets.
You'll notice that along with my walnut, I also have a very thin band of oak. I don't know what it is about these speaker builds, but I can never help myself from adding a little accent strip during the glue up. While I waited for my glue to set, I started cutting the front and rear baffles out of a sheet of MDF, which is acoustically one of the best materials to build speakers out of because of its uniform density. Technically, hardwood is actually a step down, but I doubt there are many people out there who could ever hear the difference. And I just prefer the more solid feel of, well, solid wood cabinets. So my compromise was to make these panels out of MDF as a hybrid approach. Post glue up, I ran my panels through the drum sander, and because I am absolutely obsessed with trying to do as many things at once as possible, I was also painting my panels at the same time.
I think I deserve some sort of multitasking award for that. All right, now that these guys are cut, we are going to cut some bevels and some dados on them over on the table saw.
On my last speakers, I did a very similar bevel detail. For those ones, it was purely a design thing, but on these speakers, it's actually gonna be a little bit functional too. But I'm getting ahead of myself, so we'll come back to this a little bit later on. Next, I cut 2 channels for my front and rear panels to slot into. This was done 1 blade width at a time. A dado stack might have been a better choice here, but hindsight is 20/20. The front panel I mounted in a dado, but the rear panel, that one I cut as a rabbet so that the rear mounted controls would be flush with the back and easy to reach.
So our front and rear baffles fit really nicely into the channels we created. And now our next job is going to be transforming this cabinet sheet into a cabinet box. So in order to do that, we're gonna fold it up onto itself. So you can see I marked some lines here, and these are just kind of rough guides for the miters that I'm gonna have to cut on the sheet in order to turn it into a box. So unfortunately, this sheet is a little too big for my miter sled, so I'm gonna have to do this cut on my miter saw. And I'm a little bit worried about it because these miters need to be really tight. So if there's any blade deflection in either direction, it could potentially mess up these miters. Thankfully, this is a very high quality saw and I have a lot of faith in it, but still a bit nervous about this step.
At first, the miters were going really smoothly. I mean, yeah, they were nerve-wracking because there was 0 room for error and tons of room for blade deflection, but I was taking it slow and everything was going more or less according to plan. Eventually though, I had to cut this tiny little piece and it was so small that my miter saw clamp couldn't properly hold it down. So I actually ended up sticking it in place with double-sided tape to keep it from moving around during the cut. And it actually worked surprisingly well. Maybe a bit too well since it was really hard to remove after the cut.
Oh, that is a perfect fit. Okay, so those are the 3 cuts that I was worried about the most. So now we have continuous grain that wraps from this board all the way up the sides. So now we just have to do a couple easy cuts so that this slots in here like so. Throw this last one in place and look at how good that looks. With any luck, this should just slide in here like so. Oh yeah, oh, that is a satisfying fit. All right, let's glue this thing together. Actually, you know what? Quick behind the scenes shot. So before I ever actually do any big glue ups, I like to do dry runs first. So you can see right now I have everything all assembled, but there's no actual glue on any of these joints. This lets me know which clamps I'm gonna need and where they're gonna go. And that helps to take a lot of the pressure off when I actually apply the glue.
Glue ups are always kind of a race against the clock. From the second the glue hits the wood, you really only get like 20 minutes or so before it starts setting up on you. And as is, this glue up took me 12 minutes to do. So you can imagine if I hadn't taken the time to set up all my clamps beforehand, I easily could have run over that 20-minute limit. And that would have been bad. But thankfully I got it all done, let it dry for an hour or so, and then took all the clamps back off.
Woo, look at that, we got ourselves a box. All right, let's do a quick finish application and sanding montage, and then we will move on to the next step. Now that this finish is dry, this thing is looking so good. Now, if you were a longtime viewer of this channel, you may be looking at this speaker cabinet and thinking, yeah, it's nice, but it's a little bit samey when you compare it to some of your previous work, and that is definitely a fair criticism. But we aren't done yet. We're gonna differentiate this speaker with some accessories. On some of my previous speaker builds, I had the benefit of really nice drivers that I could kind of use as a centerpiece of the speaker. On these speakers, I don't know, these drivers just don't excite me that much. So I've actually designed what I think is a pretty cool speaker grill. So it's kind of retro inspired. I took some design cues from my desk actually. You can see that the center grill here is very similar to the air intake on my PC drawer. But overall, I think it's just gonna be a cool looking cover, and we are going to carve that out on the X-Carve. All right, let's get that out of there and see how it looks. I mean, I said let's get it out of there and see how it looks, but I can already see that it looks really good. Wait, I should swear. It looks really, really good. Look at that. That looks sick. Now I have another very fun step planned for this guy.
Actually, you know what? I forgot one little thing. Before we move on to the fun step, I had to cut a bevel the whole way around the face of the grill. That way it can sit nicely inside of the speaker with a cool looking reveal, which, like I said before, will be functional because it'll let you get your fingers in there and, you know what? I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself again.
At one point, I was thinking about painting this grill white, but this is walnut and it seems like kind of a shame to paint such a nice piece of wood. So a few days ago, I was in here in the shop and my dad was working on one of his projects and he was bleaching some cherry for a sculpture base. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we tried to bleach this walnut to see if we could get it as white as we possibly can?
So obviously I've never used wood bleach before and I had no idea what to expect here, but I followed the instructions and brushed it on. Honestly, I was kind of expecting it to work like the opposite of a stain. However, that wasn't really the case.
Well, not really exactly what I expected. Maybe it takes a little while to work. Okay, it's starting to change a little bit. I walked away for like 15 minutes and I can see that it is actually starting to get a little bit lighter, but I think we're gonna have to do a couple coats.
I think you can see here that it's starting to get a bit lighter, especially around the middle, but this is still far from the look that I wanted. So I applied a couple more coats of bleach. Oh, and in case you were wondering, I used a Q-tip to get into all those hard to reach spots.
3 coats in and we are looking very white. For reference, this is what we started with. So yeah, that's getting there. I'm gonna do one more coat and then I'm gonna leave it to dry overnight. 24 hours and 4 coats later, and this is now looking really white. Although you do still get some of that original walnut grain in there. So now we have to discuss how we are going to mount this to this. And just like in my previous video, I'm going to use some magnets.
So this part of the build ended up not working out that well, so I'm gonna breeze through it relatively quickly. I CA glued an array of small magnets to the front of the speaker cabinet, then I countersunk a bunch of corresponding magnets into the speaker grill, and, well, it's probably just easier if I showed you how it turned out.
All right, got our magnets on there. Let's see how this works. And now the real test. Yeah. That's what I was worried about. I think we're gonna need some more powerful magnets. I did actually think this might be an issue, so I did order some more powerful magnets. So while we're waiting for those to arrive, we got a couple little things to do.
Obviously, the first thing I had to do was remove the magnets that didn't work, and then repair the damage left behind. On the grill, that was easier said than done because I had countersunk the magnets into it. So I actually had to pop them all out and then run the whole thing through the drum sander until I removed enough material to cover my mistakes, which of course meant that I had to re-bleach that side of the grill too. But can we all just take a second and appreciate how cool it looks half bleached and half unbleached? After that, it was time to install some handles. Seeing as this is going to be a portable Bluetooth speaker, I wanted it to be easy to move around. And I felt like these leather handles also added to the retro feel of the front grille. Finally, I added some soft rubber feet, which should help to isolate the speaker from whatever surface it's placed on and, in turn, improve sound quality.
All right, let's start assembling the guts of this Bluetooth speaker. So the way this works is actually quite interesting and cleverly designed. Basically, what we're gonna be doing is building a stacked module onto this backplate and then installing it in the speaker.
I know, that sounds a bit intimidating, but you'll see it's actually pretty easy to do. The first step was installing all of the switches, indicators, and inputs onto that backplate. Oh, and while we're on the subject, I've provided a link to the kit that I used in the video description so that you guys can follow along at home.
Okay, so that's the back panel done. Now we're going to attach some standoffs to it and attach the control panel. Oh no, lost a screw. Oh geez.
These standoffs give you somewhere to mount the control panel, which handles all the Bluetooth connection processing and serves as an amp to power the drivers. Before mounting the control panel, I connected all of the wires from the backplate. Trust me, you're definitely going to want to make these connections before assembling. Finally, the cherry on top was the battery harness. This holds 3 batteries that power the speaker and make the whole thing portable. Unfortunately, that had a little bit of an issue here.
I got scammed on this build and I want to make sure that that doesn't happen to anybody else. So the long and the short of it is, if you're buying lithium-ion batteries for a build you're doing, stick with the name brands, because if it's from a brand you've never heard of before, there's a very good chance that they're completely lying about all the stats on their batteries. So I got these Ultrafire batteries off of Amazon, but after doing a little bit more research, I found out that all of the numbers listed here on the side of this battery are basically a complete lie, and these things are a real fire hazard. So I've ordered some proper batteries that I will install in this for the final build, and we'll just use these ones for testing right now. All we have to do is very carefully lower this whole module into the speaker cabinet and just be careful that we don't pinch any wires on the way in.
And then screw it into place.
If I reach in here and just fish out these wires, we should be able to hook up our speakers by doing an eensy-weensy little bit of soldering. Before we go ahead and secure these drivers in place, I want to take a second and install some PolyFill inside the speaker cabinet. What this stuff is, well, it's basically the filling that you would get inside a really cheap pillow. But in this application, we're going to stuff it inside the speaker cabinet, and it's going to absorb any sound waves that are bouncing around inside the cabinet, which should have the effect of making this speaker sound a lot better. Shove it in here, pull it through, and kind of unravel it a little bit. Well, that was perfect timing. Basically, as soon as I finished installing the speakers in the cabinet, the new magnets showed up for the grill. But before we can install these, we have to apply a coat of finish to the grill.
I don't know why I always do this to myself. Brushing this finish on was not the way to go here. All that fine detail work on the grill took forever to do with a tiny little artist brush. So if any of you have a good recommendation for an entry-level spray gun, I would love to hear them down in the comments. While I waited for my second and third coats to dry on the grill, I set about assembling all of the speaker components inside my entry-level case. The process here was exactly the same as before, so I'm not going to bore you guys with the details.
Okay, so this guy is now dry, which means we get to install it using our newer, stronger magnet. Now, one thing I was thinking about while this was drying is that these magnets may very well interfere with the speakers ever so slightly. So I was doing some testing, I was playing music, and I was moving the magnets around the speakers while they were playing, and I couldn't hear any perceptible difference. So I think if there is an effect, it's going to be really, really small.
Of course, trading off between aesthetics and sound quality is always going to be a personal decision. So if you feel like you have audiophile-like hearing, you might want to omit a speaker grill and magnetic mounting system from your own speaker builds. The epoxy I'm using here is a 2-part system that sets up in about 5 minutes and bonds incredibly well to both metal and wood. Once the first set of magnets had cured in position, I slid a corresponding magnet onto each one. I then gave each magnet a little dollop of epoxy and then carefully lowered the grill in position. Doing it this way ensured that I had perfect alignment between my magnets on both surfaces.
We're gonna let that epoxy dry, and then we're gonna take these guys home and see how they sound. You know what? Before we test the audio quality of these speakers, we should probably remove this tape first. Oh, I really hope these new magnets hold. Oh, yeah, they do actually. Look at that. Let's see how hard it is to get this thing off. Okay, yeah, you can get it if you pry at it. Nice, that is really good. And then let's see how to go back. Wow, got quite the clamping force to it. All right, enough clanning around. Let's turn this guy on, turn up the volume, and see just how good it sounds. These things sound really nice, and the best part is these drivers aren't even fully broken in yet. In terms of volume, I am scared to take these things past 75% without my neighbors complaining, but that's to be expected when you have two 50-watt drivers in each speaker. For reference, your typical Bluetooth speaker is like somewhere between 15 and 30 watts, so we are well over triple that. And the fun doesn't stop there either, because each one of these speakers has its own auxiliary input. So you could easily integrate one of these speakers into a larger home theater setup, or you could connect it to a device that doesn't have Bluetooth, like a record player. And of course, because each speaker has its own internal battery, you can just pick them up and take them wherever you want to go. At the end of the day, what I think we have here are two very capable Bluetooth speakers, one of which you could put together in a couple of afternoons, and the other one, well, that one took a bit more time, but I think the results speak for themselves. Oh, and I almost forgot. I did say I was going to give away this speaker at the start of the video, didn't I? So here's what you got to do if you want to win. It's real simple. All you have to do is comment down below with your Instagram handle. 2 weeks from now, I will pick one of you at random, and then I will announce it on my Instagram, and I'll get in touch with you and we can figure out the shipping detail. And on that note, I think that is the perfect time to end this video. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, comment, and subscribe if you aren't already. As always, I deeply appreciate anybody who does any of the above. Big thank you to all my Patreon supporters who you can see listed beside me right now, and good luck to anybody who enters to win this speaker. That's it for me, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.